How you doing, everyone? Welcome back to NRL Fantasy Analysis. In this video, I'm going to be going through the Warriors and the Titans predicted team lists. We're also going to be talking about the Titans trial team that's been named yesterday. So we're going to get started with the Warriors and Roger Tuivasa-Sheck. So we've spoken about him a fair bit, but with him, he's someone who I think is slightly undervalued. It's his last year with the club. Obviously wants to lead them to hopefully a finals berth and a deep run at that. So he's someone that didn't score a lot of tries last year, and I think it's going to be really important for a lot of people's teams across the season. I definitely think he's a top five wing fullback, and he'll feature in a lot of people's teams this year. Fusitu'a is someone that a lot of people have been talking about in this preseason, just for the fact that he's 268k, and to me, I don't see the upside. Just when you look at what his scores have been in a full-time wing position over the years, he has random big games like any winger does when he gets a double or a triple. But he's not someone that has any upside. He has to score 30 plus to be worth it for your team. Obviously, he's dual position, but I don't see the upside there, and I wouldn't be bringing him into your team, and especially when there's going to be a couple of other cheapies who should come into the fold come round one. You're thinking guys like Laurie, Tex Hoy, these kind of guys that I think are a much better option than Fusitu'a. Peter Hiku hasn't been fantasy relevant for a long time, so we're not going to bother talking about him. We've spoken about Ewan Aiken. He has that spot locked down for the season, and he should do well in that position. I think he might have a slight bit of upside, but that is going to, it's going to play a part. Are Warriors going to be a really good team, or are they not? I see them as a middle ranked team. Their forward pack is really going to help their outside backs, and then with some young halves in Harris Tavita, especially with Nikorima leading them around, I think they can do okay. But again, this is a team that has a bunch of new players in it, and is something that we're going to have to follow along the way. Ken Mamalo, again, very similar to Fusitu'a, and just does the work that he needs to, and doesn't have a lot of upside there. Cody Nikorima was someone we've also spoken about, and I think that he possibly has a slight bit of upside. He's been a decent option in the past, but I wouldn't be talking about him too much. Chanel, I've still been getting a lot of questions about him, even though I've been doing a bunch of videos on him. So I'll jump back in again. Price at 35. We look at the start of his year, and it's really low. Had one game off the interchange for 17 minutes. A bunch of games almost playing the 80 at 5'8". So once he moved to halfback, you can see a big shift in his point scoring. Started with a 48. He has a bunch of low ones in the mid-20s and 30s, but then he has a host of 40s and 50s to round out the year there. So in that small sample size, he has some decent games, and you can see when he's kicking goals, it's obviously going to bolster his scoring much more. But you look at what happens with his kick meters in that time. So his base stats are a lot more improved than what they were before that, apart from that first game. But even that first game, he had a score of 31. So he's someone that has a little bit of upside, being priced at 35. But if he was around 380k, I think I'd probably bring him into my side. But I don't think he's going to be a perfect option, especially when you got someone like Townsend at a similar, who I'm also getting a lot of questions on, at a similar price, slightly cheaper, who has some nice upside when he's not playing with Sean Johnson, which you can see here in 2019, from round 8 to round 13, he played without Sean Johnson for scores of 35, 50, 54, 39, and 47. You can see his kick meters goes up dramatically, and I think that for the first part of the year with Sean Johnson out, I think Townsend could be a lot safer option than Chanel. Chanel might have a little bit more upside, closer to 40 odd, but I'm personally not going to be picking him up at this stage. Adam Fanua-Blake, I'm also having a bunch of questions about, so we'll pop him up as well and go through him, guys. But please make sure you like this video if you're enjoying it for that YouTube algorithm, and please hit subscribe. I really appreciate that. But Adam Fanua-Blake, he already had big minutes at the Manly. Is he going to get those minutes at the Warriors? And my thoughts are no. Will he get 60? I don't think so. I think he's going to average about 50 minutes like he did for the majority of last year. He has a massive score of 96. Almost made the 100 club last year with a couple of tries in the game. I see him averaging close to 50, if not just below, for the Warriors, with his scoring being slightly up and down. Has the odd 40s with 50s, and then a couple of really big scores. I don't see him someone you want to bring into your team, as he's not a an out-and-out keeper for your squad. Wade Egan we've spoken about, so we'll leave him there. A little bit of upside, but when we look at their predicted team list, it hasn't got a hooker on the bench. So there's a good chance that he plays 80. There's a chance that Tavanga spells him for a little bit. But if you're looking at the others on the bench here, you've got guys like Jack Murchie who should play a bunch of games in the back row. Josh Curran should get some games. Bunty Afoe is in there as well, but Paul Turner's a chance to play some hooker. But again, he's not going to be in that top 17. So that's a couple of things you'd want to look at with the Warriors. There's just not a lot of guys waiting in the wings. With a little bit of cover in the back row, but it'll be interesting to see what happens if any of the winger fullbacks go down. You've got someone like Montoya who's come over, Hazer Perham, Adam Pompey, these type of guys. So yeah, not too many guys waiting on the wings to try and get into this squad. So if you like people in this starting team, then I think that they're going to be decent options to play out the season from there. So we spoke about, we've got Wade Egan, we've got Leeson Armour. We'll speak about him again. Leeson at 360. And you can see here just so many forwards. You got Adam Fanua-Blake, who's you'd expect to play close to 50 minutes. Leeson Armour, let's say he gets 40. All right, that leaves 70 minutes for some of these guys on the bench, which Tanua Brown should play somewhere between 30 and 40. You got Kane Evans in a similar position. Toyo Harris, how much time is he going to spend at lock? You'd expect if he's going to play close to 80 minutes, then Tavanga's going to get spelled for maybe 30 minutes a game. There's going to be a fair few minutes to go around with only, you'd expect one of our back rowers to get the 80 minutes in Toyo Harris. Ben Murdoch-Masila, being a big guy, I don't expect him to play the full 80 minutes. Jazz Tavanga doesn't play the 80 minutes, so I think Harris is going to be a guy. If you're something that's very interested in Harris, then I think he's going to be good for your squad. Eli Katoa can play the 80 minutes if he gets a chance in the starting side, which he might. And if he does, then it might be something to think about. But I definitely think there's enough minutes to go around, even with the forward pack as it stands, just for the fact that you haven't got two second rowers like a lot of teams do that play the 80 minutes. So just have a think about that. So with Leeson Armour, if he's getting at least 40 minutes, so 40 minutes at 0.88 is just under 36 a game. Okay, so that puts him at a minimum of 8 points underpriced based on his PPM of last year. And when you see, yes, he had a couple of games last year, but he's gone into them not averaging the meters that he normally would. He's usually over 100, and just didn't have the tackles that he usually would. But they're still, even in 2 games that aren't that great, it still makes his price go up. But you can have a look at previous scores, and he has runs of games where that's those same minutes where he jumps up to 120, 130 meters, which bumps up the tackle breaks and averaging close to 30 tackles. And he's someone that has a fair bit of upside if he's going to get 40 minutes at a minimum. And if he gets up closer to 50, to 45 to 50, then I think he's 10 to 12, even 15 points underpriced, which could be a really cool option for your bench in your current team. We spoke about the guys. Ben Murdoch-Masila, it just depends how many minutes he gets. If he gets, I think he needs 60 to be worth it for your side, just with the fact that he's over 400k already, with an average price of over 30. I think he definitely needs big minutes to do well. And we've already spoken about what happens to guys, coming back from England and not the competition over there not being as good as the NRL, and coming back and not playing as well upon return. So have a think about that. Toyo Harris should play the 80. That's the goal anyway. Tavanga for 50. A few people have had him in their squad, but I think he's already priced at where he was after having a pretty decent year. I had him in my team at one point last year. Bailey Sirenen, I think he's going to be an interesting one. Hopefully he's someone that drops a bunch in price, and then you could possibly bring him in if there's a bunch of injuries in the backs, if he has to start. Tanua Brown was a good cash cow last year. Katoa, if he drops a fair bit in price by playing on the bench and then gets a starting gig, I think he's going to be really cool to have. And then Kane Evans just going to do his thing. So there you go, guys. That's the Warriors predicted lineup. We'll move over to the Titans now. And this is a team I'm really interested in. I think it's a team I'm going to have either 3 to 4 players in my squad, or I could potentially have none, just for the fact that I'm a little bit scared as to how they're going to go. I think if they're a team that's going to go really well, then a bunch of their players are going to score well. But if they're sitting around that 6, 7, 8, 9, compared similar to where they came last year, in the middle of the pack, I don't see as much upside as I would have hoped. You got someone like Brimson who averaged 50 odd last year and has a small chance of some upside, but he's also priced pretty close to where that is. If we look at AJ, that's not going to work. Brimson, Alexander. If we jump in to see where he's at, he's priced at 50 for his 51 average, so that includes all full-time games during that time, and he's going to have the up game, he's going to have the down game, and he scored a bunch, and he did score 7 tries during his 9 game stretch. So that's a pretty good scoring clip. Will he improve too much from there? Not exactly sure. But when you've got someone like Pappy who might be kicking, if he's kicking, he's going to have a bit more upside than Brimson. He's obviously electric, but if the Titans aren't playing well, when he came back, they played amazing that last sort of 8 rounds. So can they do that again? That's my question, and that's going to be my question with this whole team. Someone like Fogarty seems to play well regardless, but we just listened to Talking Leagues podcast with Fogarty, and he spoke about the reason why he started doing really well, and that was because he finally got to learn everyone in the team, who they are, how they like to play, also all the plays that they have, and just getting comfortable. Average under 40 for that first part of the season, and average 57 for the back end, and that's where you might see some upside for Fogarty. But if their team isn't going as well, then him scoring at around 50 points a game is going to be pretty safe to say. He's someone that defends well, kicks for a lot of meters, and just did really well in the in attacking stats as well, especially during the back end of the season. You can see all these numbers through here. The majority of it was then when he was scoring well and the Titans were doing really well. So when he first started, there wasn't as much happening, and that's why you can see a bunch of scores in the 40s and 30s there at the start. But he's someone I'm really interested in bringing into my side as well. And then we look at the back line here. If we scroll over to what their team looks like here, they've got Herbert in the centers, which they did have here in the predicted lineup. So it looks like that's exactly where he's going to be playing, and he's a really interesting option if he's going to be playing in the center position, just for the fact that he hasn't played there a lot, but he's not someone that's ever scored really well. I understand that he's played a lot of time at the Warriors, who haven't been a great side, but you look at his center scoring, he got a 4 in 80 minutes. He's got a 10 in 80 minutes. He's got a 36 and another 10, obviously in 38 minutes that time. But he scores in the wing. This little period here, back end of 2020, and then some earlier games in 2019, he did well and played a bunch of center there. 30 or 25 or 60, 23, 19, 27, and 33. When he's priced at 26, it's a bit scary. He doesn't have dual position. Yes, there's a good chance he kicks, but there's also a chance Fogarty kicks. There's just a lot happening in that team, and a lot to be worried about. With him, but if you bring him in, you want him to average 35 to 40, and I'm not sure that that's a very likely outcome. I think there's a decent chance, but I also think that there's a decent chance that he just averages 26 to 30, and it's kind of just what do I do with him? And I have to trade him out at some point anyway. So something to think about with Herbert. Kelly we've spoken about, I think he's a good chance of making that leap up into the top tier gun status in the centers, especially again if Titans do well. A lot of these players are dependent on that. Yeah, when you think about it, who's come over? Tino and David Fafita. The rest of, and Herbert, right? But the rest of the team is pretty much the same. Obviously, you got Brimson back and firing, and a lot of people are just going back off last year and how that year played out. But remember, last year was very different for a lot of teams. Teams were, Storm was sent up to Sunshine Coast. Obviously, it did well for them, but it was a very different year, and we'll see what happens in more of a normal year as to if things are going to change, how teams are going to fare with being back to normal. I look at teams in the NBA, for example. Miami Heat did amazingly well in a bubble situation with a bunch of younger guys, which you can see is a little bit more like what the Titans were last year at the back end. They fared really well, and they're struggling this year in more of a normal setting. So just an example for you there. If we keep going along, Ash Taylor, people are talking about, but he's someone I owned last year, and I would be really scared to own him again, especially with Fogarty more steering the ship. I thought Taylor would do that more last year, but he's going to be playing more as a running 5/8 and feeding guys like Kelly and Brimson out the back there. You look at Mitch Rain, he's someone that if he's going to be playing 80 minutes is slightly undervalued. And you can see on the trial teams that the majority of this is very similar to what you can see. And the guys on the interchange, you got Sammy, who's replaced by Corey Thompson. So either way, they're both not fantasy relevant anyway. But you got Peachey on the bench, who should take a bunch of minutes off Tino through the middle. I'm expecting Tino to play somewhere between 50 and 60 minutes, and is that enough? Which we'll have another look at in a second. But in terms of mid-range, you've got someone like Tanner Boyd, who's a good chance off the bench to take some minutes. Aaron Clark's there as well, but I'd say Tanner would be ahead at this stage. You got Jamin Jolliffe, I'm not sure how to say it. Should come off the bench for some of the big dogs, but Mo Fodawaker priced at around 50. He might take Wallace's spot if Wallace struggles a fair bit. Kevin Proctor playing close to the 80. David Fafita playing close to the 80. Where are the minutes for Tyrone Peachey? That's my question. He's got... he might come on for one of the big boppers. So let's just say when Mo goes off or Wallace goes off, you might see a Jolliffe and a Tyrone Peachey come on, and then he might be able to stay on for the middle 40 to 50 minutes and then pop off. And we'll have a look at both of those players now, because I think they're both really interesting options. If they're playing very similar minutes, which is my guess, you've got Peachey at 528. He's obviously in the mid and the centers. So if he can average closer to 45 to 50, playing 50 to 60 minutes, then he's going to be pretty much the center best player of the season. So we have a look at it here. These are the type of minutes he was getting off the interchange, but he has 57 minutes for 7 points. He has 60 minutes for 25 points. Right? These are obviously in, depending on what happened during the game, you might have come on to center, which you can see here, more chance of playing in the centers with those less meters. But the majority of the end of the year, he was coming in and playing the lock position. Obviously, you can see through here, he's not going to be getting those types of minutes at 60, 64, 80, and 65. Even in those minutes, he got a 34 and a 40. So when he's already priced at 40, it's a little bit worrying when he can do that. He's obviously going to have his big games where he gets a bunch of tackle breaks, runs sideways, is able to dart through the line, but there wasn't a lot of attacking stats. I know I'm saying a lot of information here, but that's probably my thoughts on him, just to the fact that it's very confusing as to where he's at and what he's going to be able to do in this team, and I wouldn't want to... I don't know, for me, I feel like I don't want to bring him in at the start, especially if we're not sure exactly what's going to happen with their rotation. Once we work out their rotation, and if he's starting to do decently well, he's averaging 40 or 45, then and you feel like there's maybe a game where he's going to get the upside and you can bump that up through the year, then you can bring him in there. But I know a lot of people are really banking on him to do really well. Tino, all right, let's bank on the fact that he's going to get 50 to 60 minutes. All right, let's just look at those games. He's got a 55 the interchange for 38. That's under his current break even. 40 minutes for 36. 80 minutes for 58. Cool. 15 points upside. That's 80 minutes. He's not going to play 80. 41 minutes for 44, 50 minutes for 67 with a double, the 2 tries. That's not going to happen regularly. 62 minutes for 86, this was his big one. So 200 meters, 9 tackle breaks. Cool, these are the type of games that he will have. Just think about that, guys. If you bring him into your team, you're hoping he's going to have 3 to 4 games like that a year, where he might get 1 try, a bunch of tackle breaks and go nuts. 71 minutes for 42, under his price. 54 minutes for 40, under his price. 69 minutes in the second row this time for 46, only just above his price. And then a few games of the year, he's 3 games in a row where it averages just under 50 minutes across the 3, and 64, 60, and 40 with a try as well. So that's where I'm thinking for him that he's going to be priced closer to around 50 by the end of the year. That's not a keeper in the mids. That's all you got to think about with him. If he starts playing games where he's playing close to 80 minutes, and I don't have him at the start of the year, then I just bring him in, right? That's the thing. If he starts, plays a game or two doing close to 80 minutes, and that's what he's going to play for the majority of the year, and averages closer to 55, 60, then you just bring him in. You cop a couple of price rises. He gets up to 600, 650, whatever it is, and then you just bring him in. But if he's someone that you're not sure about, and there's a good chance he averages between 43 and 50, with just a limited upside, then he's a mid-ranger that you're not sure what to do with. You end up just trading him out, especially when he's someone that should play Origin in the mid part of the year. So yeah, that's my thoughts on those guys. Not too much also to speak about. Philip Sammy, someone that could come on the bench. Sam Stones, guys you want to have a look at, who played really well when they came in. If there's a bunch of injuries through here, and we'll just work it out as we go along, guys, in terms of what those teams are going to look like. But yeah, let's just look at the bench makeup quickly. Lasone is a middle. Sam McIntyre is a middle / an edge. SASA is a middle. Tyron Peachey is a middle. I don't think that's what it's going to be like. I think there's going to be a Tanner Boyd on there, or some, that's what I think. But you can also use Peachey as someone who's a utility and can play anywhere. And just think of Peachey. Over the years, he's changed positions regularly. He'll play in the centres one week and go average. He'll then play in the middle and do well. So they'll probably use him as the utility. There's a chance that if they need to, they'll have a spare hooker. But there's a lot of minutes to go around that middle, and I see Tino playing around that 50. Wallace won't play very high, closer to 40, but yeah, that's enough on these ones, guys. I hope you enjoyed that, and as I said, please hit like and subscribe if you're enjoying these, and we'll see you in the next one. Have a good one.